What do you need to do to pass your driving test in the UK? I'm a driving instructor and I've been teaching people to drive since 2009. And in this video, I'm going to explain how the test is carried out, what you need to learn, and how good you need to get at what you've learnt to get your licence. You want to know what your driving examiner is most interested in? Well, it's quite simple. Are you safe and are you legal? If you're safe and legal throughout the test, you will most likely pass. You can still fail. Let's say you're safe and legal throughout the test, but you mess up your parking, you park between two bays. You're outside the lines. Yeah, you can fail because you haven't completed your manoeuvre, even though you were safe and legal. But most of the time, if you're safe and legal, you pass. And that's how you deal with situations. You can't plan and predict every situation you're going to see on the road. So you have to have a way of dealing with problems. If you see a problem up ahead, start slowing down. Give yourself time to approach it and think, what's a safe and legal way to deal with this? If you can come up with what's safe and legal, you've got your solution. You know what to do. If you can't, stop. Give yourself more time. Think more. And if you still can't come up with a solution, it's probably because there's no solution and you need to wait for the situation to clear. A big difference between new drivers and experienced drivers is that experienced drivers are more likely to slow down when they see a hazard. They're more likely to think about what to do, give themselves time to think about what to do, whereas a new driver or a learner is much more likely just to keep going and try and steer around the issue, even if it means hitting a bush or hitting the curb when there's really nowhere to go. So, your examiner, if they feel safe and they think you're being legal, you're probably going to pass. The test will be between 38 and 40 minutes long. This is for the car test, also known as the learner test or the category B test. The driving examiner tries to keep it as close to 38 to 40 minutes as they can. So if they know there is big traffic somewhere, they will avoid that route because they want you to complete the route, and if you're stuck in traffic, that's going to make the test longer. But also, if you end up getting back to the test centre super early because there's a lot less traffic than usual, well, before they let you go back, they'll extend the route slightly to try and make up for the time. They want you to be in the car for between 38 and 40 minutes, and that includes the manoeuvre. However, if you're not doing very well, let's say you're driving very slowly, you've made quite a few errors, and the examiner knows it's a fail, and they don't think you're going to make it back in time within the 38 to 40 minutes while going through the whole route, they're likely to cut the route short so that you can get back to the test centre in that allotted time. I recommend arriving at the test centre 5 to 10 minutes before your test time. You don't want to be rushing around just before your test. That doesn't put you in a good frame of mind. Also, be in the area 20 to 30 minutes before your test. You can get in the area, you can drive round close to the test centre and then park up 5 to 10 minutes before. Then go into the waiting room. Your driving examiner will come out and call your name when it's time. They will then ask you for your driving licence and possibly, although I don't remember the last time this actually happened, they'll ask you for your theory test pass certificate, if you can call it a pass certificate. It's just an A4 piece of paper, but they don't generally ask for that anymore. They just ask for your licence. They'll look at your licence, look at your photo, compare it with your face to make sure it's you. They'll get you to read something on their tablet computer like a declaration and get you to sign it. They'll then ask you, do you want your driving instructor or supervisor to be present during the test? In other words, do you want them to come along and sit in the back whilst you do your driving test? And they'll ask you if you want your driving instructor or supervisor to be present during the debrief. The debrief is at the end of the test when the examiner tells you whether you've passed or failed, and they also give you some advice. But before you get in the car, your driving examiner is going to get you to read a number plate. You can use your glasses or contact lenses if needed. The minimum distance you need to be able to read the number plate from is 20 metres, but they won't get you to do it at 20 metres. They'll do it at quite a bit more than that just to make sure. If you fail to read the number plate the first time, they'll find another number plate. They don't want you to attempt the same number plate more than once. This time, they'll let you get closer to that 20-metre mark, but still a bit more just to be safe. If you still can't read the number plate, they'll get their official tape measure out and measure 20 metres from a different number plate again. This time, they will allow you to stand exactly 20 metres from that number plate and see if you can read it. If you still can't read it, well then the test will be a fail. The test won't go ahead. However, if you get numbers and letters mixed up that look the same, like 0 and O or 5 and S, that's fine. They do accept that and the test will still go ahead. During the test, your examiner is going to ask you 2 questions. The first question, which happens after you've read the number plate, is known as the tell me question. They're questions like, how do you check your oil? Explain how you would pull the dipstick out, wipe it, and check it's between the minimum max after you've dipped it again. Or how do you find out the correct tyre pressures for this car, and how would you check the tyre pressures? Don't touch anything under the engine because you might burn yourself. So they don't actually want you to do anything, they just want you to explain. If you want an in-depth video into these questions and answers, I'm not going in depth in this video about them, I'm just explaining how they mark the test and what you need to learn. There's a video in the top right-hand corner of your screen all about the show and tell questions. If you get one of these questions wrong, you will get one driving fault, one minor driving fault, which is not a fail in itself. But if you accumulate 16 of them, then it is a fail. But what's interesting is if you get both the questions wrong, you still only get one driving fault. You don't get 2 faults for getting them both wrong. So you have to get them both right to avoid the fault. The second question they ask you, which is known as the show me question, they ask you that one later in the test when you're on the move. And that can be questions like, how do you demist your front windows, or how do you open and close your side windows? It's much easier to fail your test during that question though. Because you're on the move, if they ask you to show them how to demist your front window and you take your eye off the road, go to press the button, the car starts veering off to the side and the examiner has to stop you from hitting the curb or hitting a tree or something, then that is a fail. When you get in the car, they expect you to know how to close the door. And what I mean by that is know the difference between this, when the door isn't really closed, it's on the latch, and properly closed. You must make sure the doors are closed. And you should be in a good driving position. Now, you don't have to set the car up with the examiner. You can set it up before you get to the test centre. In fact, you probably have, because you've probably driven to the test centre. But if the examiner can see that you're far too far away from the pedals, or sitting far too low or far too close, or one of the wing mirrors or the interior mirror is clearly wrong, this mirror is pointing up at the International Space Station, for example, then you probably won't pass if they think there's something severely wrong with your driving position or your mirrors. So make sure everything's set so that you have good control of the car. Don't turn the engine on when you get in the car until they ask you to. You can put the ignition on, and that can be a good idea if it's raining, just to try and reduce the mist that will build up on the windows when you're waiting in the car and they're talking to you. If it is raining, they'll likely then ask you to turn the engine on so that you can put the demisters on properly, because they don't really work very well unless the engine's on and the air conditioning can work. Obviously, make sure you've got your seatbelt on, and when you start the engine, you should start it with good control. You need to be able to start the engine to pass your driving test, so make sure you can do that. But the car shouldn't shoot forwards or backwards. It's a good idea to check your handbrake. Check that it's in neutral before you start. That's not something you have to do. That's not something I do. I tend to just put my foot on the clutch and the brake and then start it, because I know I'm going to be okay like that in all cars. And make sure you obviously select the gear you need and take the handbrake off before you go. If you forget to take the handbrake off though, and let's say you start to move slightly with the handbrake on, and you think, oh, what's going on here? And you realise, and then you take the handbrake off, that's not a big problem. You rarely even get a minor mark for that. As long as you realise your mistake and correct it, then you should be fine. You need to be able to move the car away from the side of the road smoothly and safely without making other road users brake or steer around you. So make sure you're looking behind and in front and check your relevant blind spot. So I'm going to get going now. Get ready first, and I'm looking at my mirrors to make sure it's safe. You don't need to check the curbside blind spot, but you can if you want. I've never had a pupil be marked down for not checking the curbside blind spot, but I have had them marked down for checking it because the examiner felt that the check was distracting and wasn't allowing them to put full attention to what's behind and in front and the relevant blind spot. You can't use your indicator to ask flowing traffic to let you out. I failed my driving test for that. Cars were coming past. I thought, oh, it looks busy. I indicated right. Oh, good. Car gave way to me and let me out, and I failed for stopping the flow of traffic. Now, what I could have done is if it was slow moving traffic, stop, start traffic, then I could have used my indicator to request to be let out. But in flowing traffic, you should wait for a gap. So this is how I do it. So I'm looking at my mirrors now. These two mirrors are giving me the best help. That one, I don't want to say what I just saw in that one, but that one's that one's not helping me at the moment. That's not relevant to the road. So I can see cars coming behind, the police car, the red car. There's a Jaguar coming in front, but they're not on my side of the road, so it looks clear to go. I've made my decision to go now. So quick check of the blind spot, that looks clear. I'm going to indicate to go because there was still an oncoming car and there is someone at the side of the road over there. And then you must be able to keep the car in a straight line. You can't be weaving around like a newbie, like a beginner. And when you change gear, the car must also stay in a straight line. You also need to be able to stop at the side of the road safely. Now I was wanting to stop there, but there's a bus stop on the other side. I'm going to avoid that. And then this place here is too near this junction. I probably could have got away with that, but I think I'll turn left at the end of the road here and find somewhere else to stop. So centre left mirror, left signal, slow down. You need to be at a safe speed for all junctions, at a speed where you have time to observe and time to control the car. Now I'm not moving out here because I've got a car on my left, and because this is a wide junction, I'm actually going to use probably close to their side of the road, or even some of their side of the road, to make it round that bend. And because there was parked cars there, they were already on my side of the road coming. If you're on the minor road, you should give way to the major road, regardless of what side the cars are on. You're on the minor road, they could be passing parked cars, you should give way to them. So here we go, I'm going to pull over somewhere up here. This looks safe. So centre left mirror, there's a car behind, I'm going to signal to them, and you need to be able to stop smoothly where you want to stop. You can't be stopping too early or too late, and don't bang into the curb. It's hard to see the curb, you are guessing, so don't try and stop an inch from the curb. Get within a drain, that should be good. And obviously when you're parked, secure the car, handbrake and neutral. But if you park and don't secure the car, you're not going to fail for that if the examiner then asks you to move away again straight away. But if you're staying there for any amount of time, it's a good idea. Handbrake up, neutral, or put it in park in an automatic to make sure the car is secure. On the test, they will get you to do a hill start. It doesn't matter how you do it. You can do the handbrake start method, hold your foot on the brake, lift your foot to the clutch bite point method, then go to the gas. You can use the car's hill hold assist. You can be quick with your pedals. Whatever method helps you do the hill start, it doesn't matter which one you use. As long as you're successful, have good control of the car and don't roll back. But even if you roll back a little bit, they usually let you off. How much they let you off? Well, that's up to them. So try not to roll back at all, obviously for safety. But if you rock back a tiny bit, don't suddenly panic and think you failed your test. Bear in mind though, that if you're learning to drive and you're getting into the habit of using the brake and lifting the clutch up to the bite point with the brake on so that you don't roll back, bear in mind not all cars work like that. Some cars require you to add gas before you lift clutch, or you're just going to stall all the time, which is why it's important to learn the handbrake start method so you have that at your disposal when it's needed. They also get you to do the angle start. This is the angle start. They get you to pull up one car length before the car that they want you to drive round. So in this case, it's Mercedes. That's about a car length away, slightly less on this occasion, but that's okay. That may be uphill, that may be on a flat, that may be downhill. This is actually downhill on this occasion. When you move away from here, make sure there's no one coming from behind for quite some time, because it's going to take me a little bit longer to get around this car. And also I've got to be wary of oncoming cars because I'm going into their path. As this is downhill, I'm going to start with the foot brake. I'm in gear with the handbrake off. These two mirrors are giving me help. This mirror is the most helpful because there's cars behind. That mirror is no help at all, and for some reason that's in reversing mode, so I'm going to take that out of reversing mode. That was dipped. Don't know why that was in reversing mode. Have I put it in reverse? No, I haven't. That's odd. Anyway, so that's where it should be now. That's not helping. I can see a road on the left, but I can see that in this mirror as well. So I'm going to see that there. So these two mirrors are the best. When no one's coming, I'll start moving to the right slowly to improve my view ahead. And I'll signal as well, just in case someone's coming, so I can't see. So it looks clear. Blind spot, indicate, and I'm going to start moving. I'm going to see a truck coming, so I'm just going to get near their side of the road and then stop. So now people know that I am intending to pull out from here, but I'm not in their way. I've just improved my view. And I'm checking my mirrors. Blind spot again. Yep, looks good. Go slowly. I can confirm now it's clear, so I'm slowing down a little bit to give myself time to steer without having to rush the steering, and then I'll accelerate again and continue. If you're interested in what I mean by reversing mode, the left wing mirror on this car automatically dips when I put it into reverse to help me see where I'm going. I'll show you that now. So that's normal. If I pop it in reverse, you'll see the wing mirror dips so I can see the curb better, or the white line of a parking space, whatever may be there. And obviously at the beginning of that clip I reversed into that space and forgot that I had reversed, which is why it was still in reversing mode. If I want to take it out of this mode, I can put it to neutral, and then this joystick here, if I click it to 0 and back to L, it will go to normal mode. It only goes into reversing mode when it's left in L, so there you go. And now it's returned back to normal. Or even if I drive forwards at 10 miles an hour, it returns to normal automatically. It's important to know how to do all junctions safely and legally. You shouldn't be braking harshly or making other drivers brake or steer around you. Trust your decisions. When you've been learning to drive, you've been making decisions. When you get to your test, don't suddenly change how you do junctions to try and please the examiner. You have to trust what you think is right, or you'll be second guessing yourself, and then you'll be in trouble. You should always be planning to follow the road ahead unless your examiner tells you to turn left or right. And usually it's the left lane to go ahead. So that's the best lane to choose unless there's arrows to tell you otherwise. However, if you're on a road and it's not obvious which lane you need because the arrows aren't there or there's too much traffic blocking the arrows, your examiner will usually help you. Let's say you're going ahead. Going ahead usually requires you to use the left lane, but for some reason on this occasion it requires you to use the right lane, but there's no way of you knowing. Your examiner is going to say something like this: at the roundabout you're going ahead, second exit. But on this occasion you may find it easier to use the right lane. Take their advice. They're telling you that you need the right lane here, but there's no way of you knowing. Sometimes it might be the case that you can actually use both lanes to go in that direction, but the lane they're suggesting is the lane that's much easier. You may be thinking why I didn't give way to the pedestrians waiting to cross the road at the roundabout. And the highway code, the updated highway code, states that at junctions I should give way to pedestrians waiting to cross the road into which or from which I am turning. I believe it's rule 170. But I didn't give way. And the reason why I didn't is because I felt it was unsafe. How is that going to be marked on the driving test though? Well, when the highway code was updated, there was actually a note at the driving test centre explaining how they were going to mark it, and they said they weren't going to change when they give out a serious mark. And before the updated highway code, it was not a serious mark if you failed to give way to pedestrians who were waiting to cross. In fact, it could be a serious mark if you did give way to pedestrians who were waiting to cross, but more on that in a minute. But it could be a minor mark. Take my situation, for example. It's a flowing road, 2-lane road. There's cars behind me, one following closely, and cars in the lane behind me, next to me. I deemed it was safer to continue than to wait for the pedestrian. The pedestrian looked safe. They looked like they were waiting. If the pedestrian was looking at their phone, walking towards the road, and it looked like they were going to walk in front of me, or they had already stepped foot in front of me, then that would be a different story. Then I must give way. It would be a fail if I didn't give way then. But the pedestrian looked safe. The pedestrian was waiting. So therefore, I felt it was safer to continue than to stop when I consider the cars behind. And if the examiner feels it's safer to continue than to give way to the pedestrians who are waiting, you won't get a minor. If the examiner feels that it's safe to give way and you don't, then you will get a minor. But this is what I meant earlier, but I'll get back to this. If you stopped when it was unsafe, say you braked a bit harshly and there's cars behind because there's a pedestrian waiting at the side of the road, then you could fail. So it all comes down to being safe and legal again. Does it feel safe? If it feels safe, do it. If it feels unsafe, don't do it. And you've got to be legal. Now, although that is in the highway code, rule 170, about giving way to pedestrians who are waiting to cross a road at a junction into which or from which you are turning, that's not actually law. Some of the things in the highway code are backed up by law, but this one isn't. That doesn't mean you shouldn't follow the highway code. You should follow the highway code. But if something feels unsafe, then it's probably better not to do it. However, if it's backed up by law, for example, a red traffic light means stop. So a red traffic light, you must stop. You may have heard that you need to check your mirrors every 3 seconds to pass your driving test, but that's not true. Your driving examiner isn't counting how many seconds it's been since your last mirror check. They're interested if you check your mirrors before you change speed or direction, particularly direction. So stopping at the side of the road, doing a junction, changing lane. If you're driving down a straight road, you're not changing your position, you're not doing a junction, if you keep checking your mirrors, that's only taking your eye off the road, so you're not going to be as straight and you're not going to be able to react to hazards as early. And if there's a car following close behind you, well, I'm sure you probably know, because it's filling the whole of your rear window. You don't even have to look here to see it there. It's in the corner of your eye. It's causing you stress. Usually, my pupils get stressed out when a car's following close. I get stressed when a car is following me close. I know that that car's close behind me now. That takes away my ability to brake hard and not have a collision. The best thing I can do is look forwards, plan, go at an appropriate speed where if something happens, I've got time to brake gently. If I'm looking at that car constantly, that doesn't help the situation. That only takes my eye off the road in front. During the driving test, if you slow down without checking your mirror, that is not a mark. That's not a fault. However, if you slow down harshly without checking your mirror, then that is a fault. That doesn't make sense to me though, because if you slow down harshly and check your mirror first, you're going to have to slow down even more harsh. Make sense? Because you've got to delay your braking until you've had a chance to check your mirror, which means you're driving further up the road, which means you have to brake even more harshly after your mirror check. If you need to brake harshly, you need to brake harshly. The best thing you do is start braking as early as you can so that you can brake as gently as you can, even though it's still harsh, it's less harsh, which makes it safer. But that's how it is. That's how they mark it. Brake gently and not check your mirror, you don't get a mark on the test. It's called mirrors change speed. I think that's the box. If you brake harshly without checking the mirror, then you get a minor. Really harsh, you may even get a serious. It's important to know the speed limit of the road that you're on. This is a 60 mph road because there's no signs and no street lamps. That does not mean I should be going 60 though. You should be going at an appropriate speed. This just means I have a bit of freedom. I don't have to look at the speedo so much and worry that I'm within the speed limit. I know I'm within the speed limit because I'm well below it. But it's important to make the most of the road. So I'm going slow now because I'm on this double bend with limited visibility and it's quite narrow. But now I can go a little bit faster because it's straight, and then I'll slow back down again for the bend. If I just stayed slow right the way along this road, then that would likely be a fail. You're expected to speed up on the straights and slow down for the bends to try and make the most of the road and improve your progress, help you get somewhere a bit faster. So now again, I've slowed down, tight bend, but long straight here. I can get quite a bit more speed here. I can use more of that 60. If it's a dual carriageway, then it would be 70. Now don't think a dual carriageway means 2 lanes. No, it means that the oncoming cars are separated by a barrier. It doesn't even have to be a barrier, it could just be some grass. I'm slowing down a little bit again here because my visibility is reduced. There's a road on the left, can't see as far, and that looks more narrow with an oncoming car. So I'm braking now because I don't want to meet them at this pinch point where the hedge is, and now I can accelerate again. If there's street lamps, that usually means it's 30. If the speed limit is different, there will be signs to remind you. Big speed limit signs are changes in speed limit, and the smaller ones are reminders. When driving on a road like this, where 30 miles per hour is easily achievable and the speed limit is 30, then you are expected to get close to 30 when it's safe to do so. Don't stay at 25 miles per hour because you think, well, 25 is safer than 30. No, if you do 25 miles per hour everywhere where it's safe to do 30, you will most likely fail the driving test. However, do slow down for any hazards. If you can't see, slow down. If there's parked cars and you're not sure, slow down. But if it's safe to do 30, try and make the most of the speed limit. I'm on a road now where 30 isn't going to be possible a lot of the time because there's a lot of parked cars around and we're having to give way to each other. I think it's better for me to continue here because I can fit with the oncoming car, so it's not an issue. But I wouldn't go 30 through there because I'm too close to the parked cars. Here, the cars are parked on both sides of the road. So I'm just being cautious in case someone's coming the other way, and I'm doing 14. Checking my mirrors now to go back. It's looking a bit clearer now, so now I can get a bit more speed and I can start getting near 30 again, but I've got a mini roundabout, so I'm slowing down for that, making sure I'm slow enough that it's easy for me to give way. The moped behind is quite close to me, so I don't want to put myself in a position where I need to brake hard, so I'm going to approach the mini roundabout even more cautiously. I slow down for the dove. I know doves and pigeons tend to get out of the way if you're below 20 miles per hour, but if you're above 20, they tend not to get out of the way. And it was safe for me to slow down gently, so I did. If you go over the speed limit briefly by 1 or 2 miles per hour and bring it back down, that's unlikely to be marked on a test. Don't go setting your cruise control to 32 and a 30 or staying at 32 and a 30 all the time though. Your examiner's not going to be happy with that. You may say, well yeah, my speedo overreads, so when I'm doing 32 I'm actually doing 30. But the examiner does not take that into account. They need a yardstick. They can't go, oh yeah, your speedo overreads, so just roughly near 30, that'll do. No. What your speedo says is what speed you are doing, regardless of how much you know it's out. So bear that in mind. Animals. I avoided that small dove. There's a myth that you must run over animals. That's not true. If you can avoid a small animal, please do so. Don't avoid a small animal if it's dangerous to avoid it though. If you're going to cause danger, then unfortunately it's better not to avoid the small animal. Now I keep saying small animal here. Little birds, or birds in general really, squirrels, rabbits. I mean an ostrich, I guess that's classed as a big animal. Avoid big animals, so yeah, ostriches, I don't know how often you see those. Sheep, cows, horses, avoid them as best you can. Do an emergency stop if you need to avoid one of those. They cause severe damage, they can cause injury and they can cause death. So if you see a cow on the road, slow down, brake hard if you need to, do an emergency stop if you need to, but don't be driving at a speed where you go around a corner, if there's a cow in the road, that you can't stop for it without having to do an emergency stop. If that's the case, you're driving too fast. And yes, expect cows to be in the road. I've come across them on occasion. And sheep, yeah, they like hanging out in the road. Sometimes they just sort of sit at the side of the road or sit in the road chilling out. You can drive right past them, they don't even flinch. What about coasting? Is that a fail? Well, if I coast now for no reason at a higher speed down this hill and use the brake, yes, that will most likely be a fail. But if you're coasting because you're very slow, say like less than 10 miles an hour, and leaving the clutch up is going to cause the car to struggle, then no, that's what you need to do when you're driving. You do need to coast when you're at speeds below 10 miles an hour often. So at the moment I'm slowing down in second gear, I'm getting around about 10, I'm getting near the bottom of second gear. I must press the clutch down now or the car's going to start to struggle and stall. Then I can use the gas and clutch to accelerate as and when I wish. I don't necessarily even have to go to first, although it's a bit uphill here, so I thought first will give it an extra push. But if you're, say, around about 5 miles an hour and you've got your clutch down, often you can leave it in second, give some gas, lift the clutch and go. And it's uphill here. I'll do that now actually. So I'm going to slow down, go to second, get it down to about 5 miles an hour. And let's say I don't want to go back to first because it's an awkward first gear. Bit of gas, bit of clutch, and the car moves away usually okay. If that was downhill, second gear would have been even easier. In fact, when I'm moving away downhill, I tend to use second gear because it means I don't have to change from first to second immediately, and I don't need the extra power of first because the hill is assisting me. However, in start and stop traffic, I tend to use first gear even downhill because it puts a little bit less heat into the clutch, and that can help. That can help clutch wear if you're starting and stopping a lot. If you're taking your driving test in an automatic though, then you don't need to worry about coasting because the automatic does it all for you. 1 in 3 driving tests should get the emergency stop. I have a video all about it and I'll leave a link to it up there in the top right hand corner of your screen. If you fail your driving test during the emergency stop, it's most likely because of one of these 3 reasons. Reason 1, not getting to the brake quickly enough. So your examiner says stop, but you don't get on that brake very quickly, there's a bit of a delay. That will be a fail. Number 2, not braking hard enough. So when you brake, it feels soft. And if your car has ABS, the ABS doesn't trigger. You don't have to trigger the ABS, but ideally if your car does have ABS, which it likely does in this day and age, ideally that should be triggering. And the 3rd reason is when you move again after the emergency stop. You have some adrenaline running through your body and you don't look round properly and you move when someone's coming. So once you've done the stop, take a breather. It's a good idea to secure the car to make sure you don't shoot forwards by accident. And when your examiner asks you to get going again, make sure it's safe. See behind, see in front, and check both blind spots because you're not going to be parked at the side of the road. You're going to be in the middle of your half and probably slightly crooked in the road. When dealing with parked cars, you have to bear in mind that if you're passing cars on your side of the road, you're borrowing the other side of the road. So you should really give way to oncoming cars, and oncoming cars should give way to you. But now there's parked cars on the right and I couldn't see if there was anyone coming. So I slowed down just in case someone was coming and I needed to let them finish. Or in this case, if you can fit at the same time, it's best to go at the same time if there's room, but go more slowly if you're close to each other. You don't want to be fast if you're near objects or near the curb. So the parked car is on my side this time, so I'm not going to commit too early. I'm going to slow down a bit as I approach it and be ready to give way. There is a truck coming, so I'm going to wait behind the parked car for the truck. I'm waiting in a position where it's really clear that I want to go, and I'm making it easy to go around the car. I'm not driving right up close behind it or parking near the curb, so I look parked, even though I wouldn't be parked, I'd look parked. I look like I'm waiting to go around this car. Now it's safe, I will go. If someone comes now, they should let me finish. However, now I should wait. I'm going to start passing this row of cars now, and if someone comes, as I've already started, they should let me finish. In the same way as if they have already started, if you see someone already passing a parked car and you can let them finish, you should. The rule that you give way when cars are on your side and they give way when cars are on their side is only very basic. In many situations that doesn't actually work. Often you just need to be courteous and try and help each other out. I want to clarify what I mean by being committed for parked cars. So at the moment, the parked cars on my side, I'm not committed to pass. If someone comes, I should wait. Now I've started moving out. If someone comes now, I must finish. They should let me finish. I'm moving back in now after checking my mirrors. At the moment, I'm not committed to passing this row of cars on the left. So I'm ready to wait, I'm slower. And now I've got here, I've checked my mirrors, I've started. If anyone comes now, they should stop and let me finish. Centre left mirror to come back to my side. I'm staying slow because the pedestrian's walking in the road. And obviously I can't go back to my side as early as I'd like to. When you pass cyclists, give them enough room to fall off. Make sure you don't make any oncoming traffic brake or avoid you. So if there's a bend and you can't see far enough, just wait behind the cyclist. When you're following the cyclist, follow quite closely, but not so close that if they fell off, you would run them over. Make sure you're far enough back that you're safe, but don't be too far back, because then you need too far to get past them. Try and stay as close as you can whilst being safe, and be in a low gear so you're ready to have power. Although it's not guaranteed that you'd have to do a slip road on your driving test, make sure you can do them. Not only for the test, but for after the test. So get up to speed, make sure you know how to do this. Match the speed of the traffic in the main road, signal your intentions, make sure it's safe, sideways glance as well, and use the full length of the slip road, or use most of it, because that gives time for all the other cars on the main road. That gives them more time to help you. If you try and dive out early, it's not as safe. So the right lane here merges first. Now I'm signalling to say I'm going to merge. Looks clear. Using most of the slip road, everyone's got plenty of time. I'm going the same speed as the lane I'm merging into, so that I'm not gaining on them, I'm not dropping back on them, so it's safe. We're going the same speed relative to each other. Now I need to keep a safe distance, and you should always keep a safe distance when you're driving. In the dry, the minimum gap is 2 seconds. In the wet, the minimum gap is 4. So this car in front's gonna pass this post with the line on it now. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So therefore I know that I have a 3 second gap there, because it took me 3 seconds to pass the post, at least that. I probably counted a bit slow. So I've got ample room here. When other cars are trying to join a dual carriageway or motorway, help them. Either slow down or change lane. Generally, what's in front stays in front, and what's behind stays behind. Before you do your driving test, make sure you have some experience on these roads, and make sure you know how to change lane well. If you're practicing driving with a supervisor, you can't go on motorways, but you can go on A roads that are dual carriageways, like this one. This is the A12. If you're with your driving instructor, you can actually practice on motorways. If it's safe to do 70 miles per hour, then you should. But if you're stuck in your lane like I am now, because it's a continuous row of cars on my right, then there's not a lot you can really do. However, if a gap appears, I'll move over into lane 2 and go a bit faster. Although it doesn't look like they're actually doing 70, they're only going a few miles an hour faster than me. Don't make the mistake of staring in your mirrors when you want to change lane. Make sure you're looking ahead. If you're staring in your mirrors, you're not looking forwards, and if someone in front of you starts slowing down, you're not going to notice. So if you're waiting to change lane, look forwards, use your peripheral vision to have an idea as to whether or not the queue of cars that are passing you has gone, but also just briefly check every so often so that you know, but don't stare. Make sure you know all the road signs and road markings before you take your driving test, because you can't read the road if you don't know what you're reading. On the driving test, you're going to get one of 4 manoeuvres. The 4 manoeuvres are driving forwards into a car park parking space, reversing backwards into a car park parking space, reverse parallel parking on the road behind a car, and pulling over on the right and reversing back 2 car lengths. Now you can fail your driving test if you don't complete the manoeuvre, but you don't have to complete it in one go. So let's say you're reversing into a car park parking space and you're on the line, and you know you're on the line. Don't leave it there. Go forwards and come back again. Keep trying until you're in between the lines. If the examiner has had enough of letting you try and they think, right, you've had enough time, they will let you know. So don't give up until you're in. There's 2 boxes on the test report form for manoeuvres, 2 boxes that you can get minors for or fail for. It's control and observations. So if you are inaccurate, you'll get a minor for control. They mark accuracy as control. If you're so inaccurate that it's not acceptable, let's say you're parallel parked at the side of the road but you're still a metre from the curb, then you probably fail for control. You can also get minors and fail serious marks for control of the car. So let's say you're reversing back into a parking space and you're jerking back and stopping, jerking back and stopping. You're not keeping the car consistent and slow. Then you can get minors of fail for that. Depends how bad it is. Before you do your driving test, you must make sure you can keep the car very slow and consistent. You shouldn't be lurching the car. But you're more likely to fail on a manoeuvre for your observations. If you don't look round regularly enough, there's a box of observations. You need a good 360 check regularly enough that you will notice someone before they get to you. The examiner's got to feel convinced that you've looked round enough that there's no chance of someone walking behind the car without you noticing them coming. 80% of driving tests include following the sat-nav and 20% include following the road signs. The sat-nav will be up here, the examiner supplies it. It usually lasts between 10 and 20 minutes. When they introduced it, they said it was only going to last 10 minutes, but in my experience, often following the sat-nav takes up about half of the driving test. Listen to the voice of the sat-nav, look at the map. I find the map much more helpful than the voice, to the point where my voice is usually switched off, although I have just gone a different way to what it told me to, but that was on purpose. But I should have listened to it because there's a lot of traffic here. I thought I knew better, but I didn't. If you go the wrong way, if you're following the sat-nav or the signs, that in itself is not a fail. But depending on how you drive, that could be a fail. So if you're going the wrong way and suddenly change lane unsafely to try and go the correct way, well, that could lead to a fail. If you're in the wrong lane to go where you need to go, you're probably better off going where that lane takes you, unless you have a safe opportunity to change lane. The same is true if you go the wrong way when following the signs. It's not a fail unless you do it dangerously. However, if you continue to go the wrong way on the driving test and it's clear you're just trying to make up your own route, you're not listening to the driving examiner, the sat-nav, or you're not trying to follow the signs, then the examiner will terminate the test. That's not technically a fail, but then it's not a pass either. You won't get your license. So do try your best to go where you're being told to go. Oh, and if you've forgotten which signs you're supposed to be following, then just ask. At the end of your driving test, your driving examiner will tell you if you've passed or failed, so you won't have to wait a long time. You will know there and then. They'll also give you some advice based on your driving. Even if you pass, if there's any areas of improvement, they'll let you know. If you failed, they'll tell you why you failed. But if you failed for many reasons, they don't have time to go through all of the reasons. They'll just pick out the most important ones. Every reason they fail you for, they have to write up at the end of the test in the office. So it's more work for them. Another reason why examiners actually rather you pass than fail. On the driving test, there are 3 types of driving fault. A driving fault, which I'll call a minor driving fault from now on because it makes it easier for me to explain. A serious driving fault and a dangerous driving fault. So a minor driving fault, there isn't actual danger, but you're not doing something as you should. A serious driving fault, there's the potential for danger, and that is a fail. And then a dangerous driving fault, there was actual danger, and there is a fail. So I'm going to use pulling out into flowing traffic to help you understand the difference between a minor fault, a serious fault, and a dangerous fault. So you pull out into flowing traffic and you make a car slow down a tiny bit. Well, the examiner doesn't think there's potential for danger there. They just think it was very minor. They give you a minor fault. Now, you can get up to 15 minor faults and still pass, but not in the same area. You can fail for just 2. Usually, they only allow a maximum of 5 driving faults in the same area before they will fail you. It depends how minor each driving fault is. So if you pulled out and you made someone slow down just a tiny little bit, they may allow you to do that up to 5 times. But if you made them slow down a bit more, they will probably allow you to do that less. If you made the car slow down quite a lot, they may not even go and give you a minor fault. They'll go straight to serious, and then you will fail. But if you go to pull out and it's so dangerous that the examiner thinks there's actual danger there and that they press the dual control to stop you from going, then they'll give you a dangerous fault. The examiner doesn't have to actually take control of the car for it to become a dangerous fault, but often if you get a dangerous fault on your driving test, the examiner has intervened. It comes down to the driving examiner's judgment on how bad the fault is. There's a scale of like very, very minor to very bad, how bad that fault is for where they mark it, minor, serious, dangerous, and how often they let you get away with that same minor. As I say, you can fail for 2 minors, you can get up to a maximum of 5 usually in the same area, but you can have a maximum of 15 throughout the test in different areas. But 1 serious or 1 dangerous, that's a fail. You can use driving aids on the driving test like cruise control, reversing camera and reversing sensors. Make sure if you are using the camera and sensors, you're still looking round. However, you can't use self-park. So one of those cars, we press the button and it parks in the space for you. You can't use that. You have to park the car yourself. If you think the video is helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, Collingwood are there for you because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy, and that takes away a big stress from the owner of that car. Via the link at the moment, there's up to 35% off and a £20 Amazon gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com. You fill out 1 quote form and get many quotes back to compare who's cheapest. And you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like so that you can compare how much it costs to insure different cars. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.